On April 18, 1955, one of the most influential scientists of the modern era, Albert Einstein, died. He died at Princeton Hospital in New Jersey, USA. After Albert Einstein's death, his brain was dissected by Dr. Thomas Harvey, who was a pathologist. And keep the brain of Albert Einstein to be closely studied and analyzed for use again in neuroscience. And it was divided into 240 parts that you could not study on a microscope. And from time to time, research was being done on Albert Einstein's brain. But in the year 1998, Thomas Harvey donated the brain of Albert Einstein to the medical department of Princeton University. A year later, in the year 1999, the first anatomical study of the brain was done, and various studies on the brain started from here. Most people, if all of them, would see Albert Einstein as a very intelligent, talented person who had something no one else had.
It followed from the special theory of relativity that mass and energy are but different manifestations of the same thing.
But the intent here is not on Albert Einstein, but in all different fields. If you are talented in your field, people will see you as a genius. That the person is gifted and that this talent distinguished him from other people. But here the question is whether a person must be gifted by nature or can this skill be acquired through practice? A person must learn the skill in order to be proficient in it and become very successful in the thing he does through learning. And in this book, The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, where he wrote on the cover of the book that greatness is not something you are born with, but you acquire it. Because the various studies on Albert Einstein's brain say that there is a substance that is present in a greater proportion in the left part of the brain. And that this subject is very important to you because it is responsible for your learning anything. So how can I raise the percentage of this subject and how do I learn? What is the Talent Code? A review of the book, The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. At first, this is not the only book by Daniel Coyle, but he wrote several books, including The Secret Race and the book The Culture Code, and the book for this episode is The Talent Code.
What is the secret to getting really, really good at something? I spent the last 2 years traveling to the world's greatest talent hotbeds, to very small places that produced very large numbers of talented people, to a tiny tennis club outside of Moscow that has produced more top 20 players than the entire United States, to a classical music academy in upstate New York where the students progress over a year's worth of material in just 7 weeks. When I visited these places, and I visited 9 of them, I found something that was surprising. They were different on the surface, but when you looked beneath the surface, what you saw was a pattern. There are behaviors that they share. There are methods that they share. Methods of practice, methods of coaching, and methods of motivation.
The author's goal in this book is to answer a very important question, which is the subject of innate or acquired talent or talent, and summarize this book in 3 ideas in 2-1, Talent Pools 2. The Brain and Learning 3, How to Learn Anything. Firstly, talent. Have you ever asked yourself why a country like Brazil has a large number of players in football, and why does it participate in every version of the World Cup, and the most teams so far has been crowned with the World Cup? Why does Brazil produce a talented defect, unlike the rest of the other countries? Despite the first World Cup in the year 1930 until now, Brazil is one of the countries with the highest poverty rate. And although there are countries from Europe and America that are very advanced and have professional leagues and the strongest 5 leagues, but Brazil produces more talented players around the world, unlike a country like America, which has very few professionals who are known all over the world. Does the Brazilian player have a skill and talent that no one has? A talent that no one has. And here, not only in the game of football, but in all different fields, there must be a talented person in any field, and even if it is much different from you. Here, a big question is whether a person is born with talent and instinct, or are there other factors that affect the person? And here the writer Daniel Coyle, in order to understand and answer this question, traveled to more than one country to study and understand the equation. Here, A big question is whether a person is born with talent and instinct, or are there other factors that affect the person? And here the writer Daniel Coyle, in order to understand and answer this question, traveled to more than one country to study and understand the equation. And here he discovered talent hotbeds. So he studied the countries and cities that produced talented people in the fields, and he studied the history of various models such as the Brazil model. For example, the city of Florence in the Renaissance, although the population is very small, but it produced a very large number of distinguished people in art, drawing, and science, such as Michelangelo, Galileo, Leonardo da Vinci, and many others in different places. What are the common factors by which you can learn anything in different fields? Second, the brain and learning. If you go back to the story at the beginning of the episode, there's a substance present in Albert Einstein's brain in abundance in the left part. This material is called myelin, and it helps you learn and be able to acquire any skill, no matter how difficult this skill is. Because it connects the nerve cells of the brain, the more the substance increases, the thicker it becomes. So the speed of transmission of the neuron is great. For example, we can imagine that neurons in the human brain are like wires that transmit electricity, and that the substance, myelin, is like the insulating material for wires. When this substance is absent, electricity leaks out of the wires. You must increase this substance in the nerve cells in order to make the nerve cell transmit the signal better and much faster. Here the writer says that there are 3 stages in learning. The first stage is the comfort zone, the second stage is the stretch zone, and the third stage is the snap zone.
Here, the writer says that you want to learn, you must try, and that you make a mistake and skip the comfort zone stage to the stretch zone stage.
The goal is to gradually learn and at the same time not to enter the snap zone stage because the many mistakes that make you acquire myelin. The more you try, make mistakes, fail, and learn, the more myelin will be in the brain. Here, the writer refers to a study at Washington University conducted by the scientist Henry Roediger in psychology, who divided the students into 2 groups, A and B. And the 2 groups studied the same curriculum, but Group A attended 4 sessions, while Group B attended only 1 session. Before the final exam, Group A did not take any exam, but Group B took 3 different exams. And in the final exam, it was different because each group took the same exam. And even though Group B took only a quarter of the time studying than Group A, until the success rate in Group B exceeded 50% for Group A. What happened here is because Group B took more exams than Group A, so they made more mistakes, and the information was proven more unlike Group A. The more mistakes you make and learn from them, the more myelin in the brain, the better the learning experience. Third, how to learn anything. And here the writer Daniel Coyle says that there are 3 different steps to learn any one thing, which is deep practice. Second is ignition, and the third and last is master coaching. First, deep practice, and this stage is divided into 3 different steps. First, fragmentation, second, repetition, and third, whether you feel it. First, fragmentation is that you divide the big thing that you are learning into small parts that you focus on. One part, then the other part. Do you learn one part, then learn the other part? Ideally, you have an exam tomorrow, but you did not study the curriculum sufficiently. Can you study the entire curriculum in a short time, or is it better to divide the curriculum into small pieces and study them easier? Secondly, repetition, and it is based on an idea. As for anything you do, you must repeat it more than once. And repetition here is not just thinking, but repetition with an increase in the difficulty of the thing that you repeat. Because your goal is to get out of the comfort zone into the stretch zone. Because the more times you try and the more you make mistakes, the better and much easier you learn. The more you fail at one time, the faster your understanding or education will be. And the secret here, my dear, is in repetition. The third step is to feel it. And here you have to ask a question. Am I doing what I do in the best way, meaning that this talent is in the best form for me and I present it in the best way? And if the answer is for you, how can I make it better than this? To make this talent much better, here you have to feel whether it is in a good shape or not. Secondly, ignition in short represents the fuel that gives you the impetus for progress and learning, because the desire can come from family, friends, society, the media, or influential people in your life. The key here is the desire and the will. They are responsible to teach you anything that gives you the strong impulse to reach your goal. Finally and thirdly, it is master coaching. For example, when looking at the life of Michelangelo, the world-famous Florentine sculptor, he was learning sculpture and arts at the age of 6 at the hands of craftsmen and workers in this field. This training remained until Michelangelo was able to master this talent through people who supervise or teach him the arts. Here, Michelangelo was not naturally gifted in the field of sculpture. Rather, over the course of decades, Michelangelo learned the method of sculpture and the arts. And this is what we are seeing now in his great works. Here, the trainer himself is not required to be superior, but he must support the trainee, who has a great deal of control over defects and can direct desires and feelings to the right path. Summary. The most famous question here is whether the talent is innate or something acquired, and the answer that was found on the cover of the book Greatness isn't born, it's grown. In order to arrive at this saying, he did a study called talent hotbeds. So he studied the places where there are a large number of people who are distinguished for their talent. Like the country of Brazil, which gave birth to many talented and professional soccer players, or the Italian city of Florence in the Renaissance era because they produced many scholars, artists, and sculptors. After studying gifted people, he discovered that there is something in common between them, which is the brain's production of myelin. For a material that helps you learn anything and does not produce this material in abundance, you must go beyond the comfort zone to the stretch zone. In order to learn anything, you must take 3 important steps first. Deep practice. In short, it is to focus on anything to learn. In order to reach this state or to this stage, you must take 3 steps first. Its fragmentation is that you divide the big thing that you are learning into small parts that you study one and then the other. Secondly, repetition is to repeat something, but with more difficulty than the previous time. The third step is to feel it, and this is summed up in 2 important questions. First, am I doing this in the best way? And second, what am I adjusting to be better? The second step is ignition. In short, it is the presence of desire within you to push you to reach the thing you want. And thirdly, the last step, which is master coaching. And this coach must be your servant or support you, and he must notice your shortcomings and direct you and your feelings in the right direction and motivate you. At the end of this episode, I hope that you have benefited, even if it is a little bit. If you like this movement and this type of content, do not forget to press the like button or subscribe to the channel to watch more, because this is considered a great support for us. Thank you.